Swayed by the spirits, my experiences with the human pendulum experiment. If you are a seasoned paranormal investigator, you may have heard of an experiment called the human pendulum. This very controversial method of communicating with spirits has been around for a while. It entails an investigator being used to communicate with a spirit. The premise is that the spirit will push the investigator one way for yes and one way for no. I believe the true way that this really works is if the person that is being used as the communication device has noise canceling headphones that play some sort of music or sound so they can't be heard, can't hear what's being said. They should also be blindfolded. This is most likely the Estes method, or this is almost like the Estes method, where your senses are separated from what's going on around you. This allows for sterile conditions when asking questions. Some may ask, if a spirit can move a person one way or another while asking questions, then why can they not move doors or objects? This is a very good question. It is believed that the spirits use the energy from the subject if they are moving. Until recently, I was skeptic of this theory. The problem I see with the paranormal science community is that it is still new and people are trying to make names for themselves. Like any science, you will have pseudoscience and people will who will swear by certain methods that truly don't work or are very questionable. Don't get mad at me that started about SLS, or don't get me started about SLS and how I think it's an extremely flawed tool. So let's see here. I'm not going to go too much more into it. I just want to kind of get the gist of it. If you guys want to read the rest of it, definitely get the magazine. But, you know, I personally want to get into a little bit of discussion about this type of thing. Now, have you personally used this technique so far? And I know you just said you started fairly recently, but have you done anything like this?
Not exactly like that, but at Trans-Allegheny, I did, I guess, semi-Estes method. I sat in one of the rooms, completely dark, by myself, and definitely had an experience of a woman talking to me. I'm crazy saying this, but a woman named Nancy, elderly woman that was in the asylum, was worried about her cat, and it just kept coming through, like she was just really wanted to talk to me.
Right.
But that was, yeah, that was definitely real.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done the human pendulum experiment, but mostly because I did a lot of investigations here as of lately, like by myself, and then I've done some more with a few people. But you know, like I'll do dowsing rod sessions and stuff like that. I don't even do a lot of the Estes method anymore. It's like I just kind of got to the point now where I just film for the show and I don't really try to prove everything. There was a time in my career when I was like trying to prove everything all the time, like cross, validation and all that stuff. And, I just kind of got to that point where I'm like, I'm just going to film and people can believe me or not. I'm not going to fake anything. I have integrity and I'm just going to film stuff. And if people want to believe it, they can believe it. If the dowsing rods move, if they don't want to believe in dowsing rods. Now, I will say with that being said, like SLS, like I get what she's saying. And the SLS camera, I mean, I have a literally, like if you go on my YouTube, you can scroll back far enough and find where I have a tutorial on how to build one. But I took mine down a long time ago and I don't use it because, again, once you learn the true science behind how they work, it's really not credible at all. So it's just more good looking for video. So
what is the science behind it? I don't really know.
Well, the SLS camera, it started out with the Xbox Kinect, which was the sensors. In fact, I think, yeah, I still have some of the camera here. So this is an Xbox Kinect sensor. Of course, I had it all kind of taped and rigged, and it's in parts in drawers now. But in any case, the SLS, the original intent for the Kinect cameras was to to try to find the outline detection of like a human being, but it uses it in such a way that it really tries to create the shapes. So it can take like anything that it perceives as a potential human, it can create the stick figure. And so it doesn't mean that it's detecting a person. You know, it has nothing to do with like detecting eyes or, you know, like with our modern phones, a lot of times a lot of it has to do with eye detection. But with the Xbox Connect, it's just trying to make a human shape, and it's doing the best it can. So, and if you dig into the literature of it, it explains it even better than I can. But ultimately, it's not something that, like, a lot of people thought that it was like, oh, it's detecting somebody. You know what I mean? Like, what the heck? But the way it looks at everything in this, even though it's a 3-dimensional room and it's got the lasers that go out, it sort of looks at everything at this 2-dimensional level and tries to actually map out a human. It tries. It does. It's not just saying, oh, I see a human. It's like actually trying to actively say, okay, I can do this, and this looks like a human. So there you go. You know, and it's not accurate. And then of course it would constantly, there was this, it would always like the arms would like wave or something, or like do these funky looking dances things. And of course that was like common. Everybody would be like, look, can you wave? And it'd like do the wave. And like, you could almost predict it, you know? And so it's just not good. It's become now sort of an inside joke. So I don't think a lot of people really use them much. I don't use them. So is there, so far in your experience, has there been something that you have found to be reliable for yourself that you feel like, hey, this is pretty decent evidence?
Let's see, the different things I've used. The EMF meter is interesting, just the way I've used it with Lily, the way it comes and goes. I still don't really exactly understand it. Let's see, the REM pods definitely have used, and they seem to have been, I don't know, they're fascinating, but they definitely have gone off at predictable times and things like that.
Okay.
Also, let's see, even so, one time I spent the night in Lake Lore, in one of the room that's supposed to be haunted. I guess a woman was murdered, a bride was murdered in that room. And that was crazy. All kinds of stuff went on all night, but we had cat balls set up in the floor. And exactly at midnight, they all start going off. I don't know why. I don't know. You know, nothing in the room moved, nothing, but it was interesting.
Oh yeah. And I think that's a good approach to take in a way, is like, some investigators, they'll have things like that happen and they'll just be like, oh, that was paranormal. You know, they just instantly, they always go there. But, you know, having the takeaway where you just say, that was interesting, you know, that's a good way to be, because, you know, you want to always still stay as open-minded as you can. I moved into the believer side of things, you know, way back when I had my very first digital recorder. So when we got away from tapes and we went to a digital recorder, and then I set one up in my own house. I was like, all right, I'm going to set one up my own house. And this was like 20 plus years ago. I'm going to set one up in my house. This way I want to know, like, if you know, I don't want any contamination, because, you know, anytime I'd seen any kind of EVPs or anything, I just was never sure. Like, I was never sure, like, was there contamination? Was there somebody somehow, you know? And so when, and me and my wife at the time, when we were together, like, we had set it up. And so, oh, and ICU, no, that's not one of my inventions. That's just something I built. But anyways, so I had shut down everything. I had, like, literally, like, even turned the power off to the house. I didn't want even, like, the refrigerator motor running, you know. I want no interference. And so I set up a recorder. I know, like in the middle of telling a story. But also, hey, look, cat balls. Yeah, I don't want to dig through a ton of my equipment. I got like a ton of back there, but but I still have it to this day. My original recorder, and so set it up, and literally like we did some EVP sessions. I went into the I had at that time I had this computer that I had a music studio program because I had played a little bit of guitar, stuff like that. I'd play it into the computer, for recording. So I used that for all my EVP breakdown because it had a great audio program. Like you could see the wave, you could like enhance it, you could loop it, you could do all this cool stuff to like, you could try to clean it up a little bit so you could try to hear the EVP stuff. But like there was like one little messed up recording. It was like 30 seconds long. And I just like hit play. I was like, well, I bet it's the first one. I'm like, yeah, so I was like, and I was listening to it and like I heard like a little bit of scuffling or something, like moving around kind of noise. And then I hear like a child like say, like, we love this. And I'm like, what the heck? And then there's like this scuffle. And then you just hear a man like yell at the top of his voice, like an adult male go, spirit. Just like that. And I'm like, what? And that blew me. I got like chills, like, the goosebumps on the back of my neck, all that stuff, right? Like the hair, like, oh, that was like intense. Like, I was like, what the hell? And that, for me, that was my moment. That was my moment of like, wow, like all those years of just doubting myself, of like, well, maybe it was like, whatever. I was like, no, something there. That was, I can't explain it. That was a real moment. And that was when it really,
like at Trans Allegheny, Stephanie. And then someone really loudly goes, listen. It was very, I don't know. I have it recorded, but I don't quite understand how it works either. But
I think for me,
interesting things on there, but it definitely said Stephanie, like 5 times.
Yeah, and Mark's got a question for you, which well, I think she already answered this, but I'm gonna let her answer it again. But he said, how young were you when you had your first experience of paranormal?
That I can remember, about 13.
Yeah. I was like, I think she had said that earlier. I don't know if maybe you were, I think you might have been here, but maybe you didn't catch it. But yeah, when you were talking about with your grandfather, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but no, just to get back on the EVPs real quick, I out of everything over the years, the best, what I would call evidence, is EVPs. That's, to me, that's the best, because I've taken pictures and videos and got countless, I've done so much shit over the years. And the only thing that remains fairly consistent is EVPs. And it's just phenomenal. Every time I hear something like that, it's goosebumps, it's awesome. It really is.
Come from somewhere.
And I can't explain it, but apparently to me that just seems to be the most solid form, because even with the spirit boxes, like that's cool and everything, but it's always scanning radio frequencies. So there's DJs and music, and there's always something that can blurt that out. But with the recorders, with the microphones, it's like, and when you hear these words and you hear yelling, or you hear things that you didn't hear in a perfectly quiet room, and that you're the only one there, it was a controlled environment, it's crazy. It's crazy. So Still to this day, it's just not as exciting for the TV crowd. Because EVPs, it's like you don't get that instant gratification as you do like with spirit boxes and things like that. So